most horrific murderers. Chicago, 1978. On a quiet morning, an unmarked wooden package sat in the middle of the university campus. Everyone assumed it was something someone dropped until a professor picked it up and lifted the lid. 1 second, everything seemed fine. The next, his eyes froze. Then came the blast, small but unmistakably a message from someone who meant harm. It was the world's first encounter with Ted Kaczynski, a math prodigy with a 167 IQ, living alone in a tiny wooden cabin in Montana. He believed modern industrial society was destroying humanity. Philosophically, that might sound abstract, but the way he chose to express his ideas was anything but philosophical. With nothing but a wooden table, coils of copper wire, nails, scrap metal tubes, and an obsession with precision, he built bombs. He spent years mailing explosive packages across the United States. In the 1980s, the US postal system felt like a deadly lottery. One package exploded, another smoked, another shredded office furniture. Every box carried the same taunting tone, better luck next time, but Ted wasn't acting randomly. He documented everything like a meticulous project manager. Materials, wiring paths, blast angles, intended damage. If he had started a YouTube channel called DIY Engineering, he'd probably have earned a gold play button. In 1985, on a late morning, an aerospace engineer received a strange package. He opened the lid. A faint click sounded, the kind of sound that never means anything good. In a moment that felt endless, he realized one thing. Everything had already gone wrong, and then everything collapsed. Disaster 2.0 had begun. The investigation entered what would become a decade-long pursuit. The investigation dragged on for years. Ted's goal was to create enough fear that society would be forced to pay attention to his anti-industrial philosophy. He kept moving, constantly altering his bomb designs. To investigators, it felt like solving a puzzle missing 90% of the pieces. In 1995, the case was finally cracked, not through high-tech tools, but because Ted mailed a 35,000-word manifesto to the press. His brother read it and instantly recognized the writing style. Every clue pointed back to a small wooden cabin in the Montana woods. No electricity, no water, no internet. Just a cranky genius and notebooks that looked like a demon's science fair project. When the FBI raided the cabin, they found bombs, components, and obsessively detailed journals. What shocked them wasn't the explosives, it was the terrifying level of precision. There were diagrams, blueprints, chemical notes. When he was arrested, he was completely calm. No yelling, no resistance, just a look that said, "So you finally understood my essay." The court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and the world quietly exhaled, realizing that not every genius should be left alone in the woods with philosophical ideas. North Carolina, Christmas Day, 1929. On a small rural farm lived the Lawson family, parents and 7 children. Their children were Marie, 17, Arthur, 16, Perry, 12, Maybelle, 7, James, 4, Raymond, 2, and infant Mary Lou, just 4 months old. The father, Charlie Lawson, had always been seen as a hard-working, quiet man who did his duties without complaint. But behind that calm exterior, he had been silently collapsing under financial strain, illness, and a steadily deteriorating state of mind. Christmas morning, a day that should have been filled with baked pies, laughter, and the scent of cinnamon. But in his home, joy was nowhere to be found. His 4 daughters were getting ready to go outside for a holiday photograph. Charlie said,
"Let me fix your scarves for a moment."
But before stepping outside, he quietly walked to the barn, where he kept an old shotgun used for small game hunting and farm protection. He positioned himself far enough from the house that any sound would be swallowed by the fields and thick winter snow. His second daughter, Marie Lawson, approached him. She saw his eyes, hollow, empty, chilling. A thought flickered through her mind.
"Something is wrong."
Marie whispered,
"Dad, are you okay?"
Charlie didn't respond. Charlie Lawson was holding a 12-gauge shotgun, the kind commonly used on southern farms at the time. As Marie adjusted her father's scarf, that moment was when Charlie reached into his coat, pulled out the shotgun, and shot her instantly. One by one, he killed the remaining daughters in the yard. Every movement was cold, deliberate, as if he were completing a task he had already rehearsed in his mind. And the silence wasn't accidental. The children were too stunned to scream, and everything happened too quickly for anyone to react. After that, he went back inside. His wife Fanny was preparing lunch. She had no idea what had happened outside. She stood at the kitchen counter chopping vegetables and checking the stew, the scent of meat, cinnamon, and Christmas baking filling the room. In the next room, their 2 young sons were kneeling on the floor, arranging wooden toys. Charlie's next actions ended Christmas forever. He continued killing every remaining family member, including his young sons. He entered the kitchen and shot Fanny as she turned toward him, never understanding what was happening. The two boys ran out at the sound, but he turned the gun toward them before they had any chance to flee. It all happened in seconds, cold, exact, as though he had steeled himself for it long ago. The entire house fell into a silence, the kind that makes you want to walk out immediately. Afterward, Charlie walked into the woods. He sat down, leaning against a pine tree, and to end it all, he took his own life. Locals later found his body, along with signs he had been mentally unraveling for a long time. The tragedy shocked the entire nation. Tokyo. Morning of March 20, 1995, a group of men boarded separate train cars, but they weren't carrying briefcases. They carried small bags filled with pure liquid sarin, a deadly nerve agent. Sarin is an organophosphate compound, originally researched as a pesticide but banned because it's lethally toxic. Even a tiny amount can be enough to kill. The men belonged to Aum Shinrikyo, the cult led by Shoko Asahara. 8 a.m. Tokyo's peak rush hour. It's when the subway network reaches its highest passenger density. It's the time when everyone is heading to work, silently praying not to get stuck in the wrong spot. Over 10 million daily trips run through the network, with lines like Marunouchi, Chiyoda, and Hibiya operating near their limits. The attack unfolded between 7:46 and 8 a.m. when the trains were moving, most crowded, and escape was nearly impossible. The cult members bent down as if tying their shoes, but instead of tying anything, they laid the sarin bags on the floor. Then they punctured the bags with sharpened umbrella tips. The sarin began to leak. Colorless, odorless, with no warning label saying, "This is very, very bad." At first, passengers thought someone had spilled cleaning fluid, but the liquid sarin quickly evaporated into gas. People inhaled it, and their throats began to burn. Their vision blurred as if it had suddenly started raining inside the train. One passenger grabbed a seat, struggling to stay upright. Time seemed to slow as the toxin caused passengers to lose consciousness. Then chaos erupted. Those closest began staggering, clutching their throats as if they had inhaled fire. Some coughed violently, others collapsed, gasping for air as their breaths grew weaker. The trains kept moving because no one understood what was happening. Some passengers tried to break windows to escape, others reached for the emergency brake. But sarin spread faster than anyone could react. Kasumigaseki and Tsukiji stations became the epicenters of the disaster. Hundreds collapsed across station floors like falling dominoes. First responders rushed in without realizing they were entering a chemical hell. In the end, 13 dead, more than 6,000 injured. Tokyo was shaken to its core, and the world learned that a small extremist group could bring a modern metropolis to its knees. Anders Breivik, 32, had spent years immersed in an extremist worldview entirely of his own making. He believed Europe was under threat, and that he alone was chosen to save its future. What others dismissed as delusion, Breivik viewed as a mission. He gathered explosives, wrote a manifesto, and built a detailed step-by-step plan. 15, July 22nd. Downtown Oslo. Breivik drove a white van packed with homemade explosives into Oslo's government district. He parked, stepped out, and blended into the crowd like any ordinary passerby. No one noticed him. No one realized the van held something about to shake the entire city. 15:26. The bomb detonated. The blast tore through building facades. Glass shattered across the streets. Black smoke rose, and calm Oslo streets turned catastrophic in seconds. Right after the explosion, Breivik changed into a fake police uniform. He drove toward the ferry to Utoya, where the Labour Party youth camp was taking place. The uniform erased any suspicion. He boarded the ferry claiming to be an officer conducting security checks after the Oslo bombing. Everyone on the island believed him. Once on Utoya, he walked toward the activity area, where dozens of teenagers had gathered. A young camper approached him to greet him. The boy smiled, thinking the officer had important news. Breivik looked at him and raised his gun. The boy's smile vanished as he realized this was not someone coming to help. Breivik opened fire. Screams filled the small clearing. Campers scattered in every direction, desperate for cover. Some jumped into the freezing water, trying to swim away. Others hid behind rocks and tree trunks. Some lay motionless, pretending to be dead. Breivik walked calmly around the island, firing at anyone he saw, as if completing missions in a violent video game. Survivors managed to send out emergency messages. Special forces moved toward the island by boat, but the time it took to reach Utoya was more than enough for Breivik to carry out the massacre. When police finally arrived and surrounded him, Breivik did not resist. He raised his hands, surrendering as though the entire event had gone exactly as planned. Police were stunned to find that 77 people, most of them teenagers, had been killed. Norway was plunged into mourning. Breivik was sentenced to 21 years, the maximum under Norwegian law, with the possibility of indefinite detention if he is still deemed dangerous.